I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange. Hey there, spooky nerds, and welcome to Talking Strange, the paranormal pop culture podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Sagers, journalist, author, researcher of weird things. Also, you can catch me on 28 Days Haunted on Netflix and Paranormal Caught on Camera on Travel Channel and the Max streaming service. And if I may humbly submit, of course, it is spooky season, and 28 Days Haunted and Caught on Camera really would be nice additions to all of your Halloween and spooky season viewings, especially because Paranormal Caught on Camera, we just premiered our 8th season. So yeah, check it out. Anyhow, my guest today is Matthew Lillard. Now, you know Matthew Lillard. Going back to Stu and the Scream franchise, 13 Ghosts, the live action portrayal of Shaggy from the Scooby-Doo movies, as well as taking up the mantle of Shaggy from Casey Kasem in multiple Scooby-Doo animated series. Matthew Lillard has also, more recently, he appeared in the adaptation of Five Nights at Freddy's, the big screen adaptation, and he's coming back for Five Nights at Freddy's Part 2. He is also the host of the Amazon Prime video series Killer Cakes, which is a competition baking show, which also is very gory, and it is produced by Blumhouse, who we love. Also, Matthew Lillard is in the upcoming film The Life of Chuck, which is really gaining a lot of buzz based on the Stephen King story. This is a film by Mike Flanagan, who I absolutely adore his work, and the film is starring Tom Hiddleston, Mark Hamill, as well as folks who have been on this show, Karen Gillan, and our frequent friend, David Dastmalchian. But as far as Matthew Lillard and what we're talking to him about today, so he has this company called Find Familiar Spirits, and last year they put out a gaming and fantasy inspired whiskey called Quests and Whiskey. It was a fandom-centric spirit made by his Find Familiar Spirits company. Now, this year, for Halloween, they are announcing Macabre Spirits. This is their first premium Reposado tequila, and this is going to be available for pre-order during the Halloween season. Now, this box that it comes in, this presentation, it's a bespoke box, and it really comes with its own original story. The team behind Find Familiar Spirits and Matthew Lillard have said that the original or the inaugural release of this tequila is going to feature a limited, creepy new novella by director Mike Flanagan. That story is going to be called Rare, Fine, and Limited. And this is also available exclusively only through Macabre Spirits. So you'll only be able to check out the story through Macabre Spirits. And the cover art for the book is by Mia Bergeron, and she is an oil painter known for her use of dramatic lighting effects. And you're also, of course, going to get a stunning black bottle of tequila with Macabre Spirits. So that is available for pre-order now. So Matt Lillard joined us to talk about horror, talk about the new tequila, Macabre Spirits, and also we even got into a bit of a paranormal discussion, which he told me what he thinks about when he encounters potential paranormal activity. Really engaging conversation, and I want you to check out this talk with Matthew Lillard. All right, Matt, thanks so much for joining me today. I know we're here. We need to talk about Macabre Spirits, but the very first thing that I need to get into is just moments ago, I received a text message from our mutual buddy, David Dastmalchian, who said that I need to tell you how great you are, how incredible was the actual word, you are in the life of Chuck.
Oh, that's very sweet. That's very sweet. Well, so There's funny thing, there's this fellowship of actors and there's like this fraternity and I've been around for 30 years or something ridiculous. And every now and then you listen, I love all actors, but every now and then somebody comes through your life, you're like, where have you been my whole life? And he is that for me. First of all, I think he's like one of the best actors we have of his generation. I'm a little older than he is. Um, but he is, he's a love. He's like this depth of humanity about him that I adore. We actually did something called Grave Conversations, which is
Yeah.
one of my favorite things I've done in like the last probably in the last whatever handful of years. This thing that is this conversation around death, and I got super emotional, and he got emotional, and anyways, please text him back. He's in South Africa right now. Please text him back and tell him that I adore his face.
Yeah, I in that the talk show, the Grave Conversations, it's a great and grave concept, but you actually have to crawl into a casket as you're having this conversation
Yeah.
about life and death and everything in between. For you, how was the experience of crawling into that casket? Because that could be either fun or unnerving, depending on
Yeah.
how deep in your head you want to go with this.
Well, the funny thing is, so Elon Gale, who produced Life of Chuck, which is Dave and I are both in it, is a good friend of ours, a mutual friend. And he produced this thing for Titan Caskets, this sort of conversation around death. It's very quick. I think it's like 7 or 8 minutes long. But I will say that when they asked me to do it, I said right off the bat, I said yes, because I adore you. But I'm also going through a lot of grief right now. I lost a buddy to suicide. I have another buddy that OD'd. Like I've got a lot. My dad's got dementia right now, so I've got a lot of like depth right now in my life, and zero fear about sharing that. But I have a feeling if we get into that conversation, I'm gonna crack, and I know going in that I'm in an emotional place. So going in, getting in the, into the casket. And early in the conversation, I tapped into something and talking about the passing of my friends that, really changed the tenor of that interview. So I'm proud of it because I think that we need more of that in the world. I think we need people connecting around emotion, around grief, around like sort of expressing, how hard things are sometimes. And so so for me it was cathartic and beautiful, and I think that the piece itself, I think that we all stand, it's me and Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel and all of us, I think, stand behind that, those interviews, and are proud of what they built and what we collectively put out in the universe.
Yeah,
That's a long answer, sorry, but
no, no, I'm as someone that's studied a lot of the history of kind of how we observe death and I also focus a lot on the spooky side of it, the paranormal side, but on just the death side of it is like we don't really talk about it too much in our
no.
culture. It's so both sanitized and so repressed. So I like that if this is the conduit to having those conversations and being open about it, it ends up being a positive thing. So I'm pleased with that whole grave conversations kind of approach and hopefully as guys that are a little bit older and have traditionally been told to keep all that inside, opening up and being okay talking about it or being better about talking about it, that ultimately serves a purpose.
Yeah, oh, without a doubt. I mean, I have multiple kids, and listen, my whole life as an artist has been trained to remove the barriers of emotion, like access to anger, access to fear, access to rage, access to real depth of emotion is the trade that is my craft. And so that sounds so douchey, but it is this thing that I've spent my whole life working towards. So the idea of being in there and being able to express it and like sort of sharing that is good. All good.
Would you consider yourself a spooky kid? Like were you into creepy things and spooky things?
Not at all. Not even not in my it's not in my sort of lexicon. Like I was a kid who grew up deep in imagination. Like I played Star Wars action figures way too late. I was really a late bloomer, physically a late bloomer, emotionally a late bloomer. Like, I don't think my testes dropped until I was 24. I mean, I was just kind of like this. I was an obese teenager that moved from Detroit, Michigan to Orange County, this like homogenous sort of, you know, like whatever. I don't want to talk bad about Orange County. I had a lot of bad things to say, but I was a transplant. My mom and dad are both obese. I was obese. And yeah, and so for me, imagination was everything. That's where my acting came from. That's why I got it when I found myself in acting. Like that idea of pretending on stage really spoke to me. And so yeah, so macabre was never my jam. I also feel like I'm very like I'm empath like an empath. Like I feel things deeply,
Mhm.
like we were just talking about. And so the idea of the spooky, the idea of the occult, the idea of things that could, that affects me deeply. So I don't really dig it.
No. Okay. Well, then, so how did the being someone that performance wise
Yeah.
started doing horror movies and continues to do so. Obviously, I don't need to list your resume, but between what Scream and then I guess 13 Ghosts and then moving on to even Scooby-Doo and Five Nights at Freddy's and this continues throughout your career. So was it just a okay, I guess I need to learn about horror movies and I need to embrace that genre and hey, I even kind of like this. Was it through the career that you started liking the genre?
Well, I love the community. I don't know if I necessarily love the genre. Like I'm going this weekend to a horror convention, right? So the idea of being surrounded by those people and sort of like there's this feeling of being an outsider that I identify with in my life that I think that a lot of horror fans also identify with. And so I like that sort of fellowship between the two of us. But, I mean, I'm not a guy that goes out and seeks to consume that content, right? I'm not at the horror movie, I'm not in the theaters watching horror movies. I very rarely throw it on. The last thing I watched, I mean, I'm sort of obsessed right now with Mike Flanagan, so I am in his world, but I like the way he tells horror stories, right? I like that there's like this Edgar Allan Poe kind of vibe to it. It's really about storytelling, and then you build towards suspenseful and sort of dramatic moments. So I love that aspect of it, but for me, look, it's just it's if I had to choose a genre, it's not my it's not really my top three, I guess. The thing I do like about it, look, I know I'm ruining everything. Am I ruining the entire? Should we just start all over? Should I just get out?
No,
Um,
no, I like the honesty. Don't worry. Like this is
yeah,
great because first off, I appreciate the love for fandom, and that was something I was going to get to anyhow. But the kind of the natural, I guess, evolution for you being a person that is known in this space and then kind of carrying forward with the Macabre Spirits, which we can get to. But I mean, first off, and Flanagan, of course, like when you talk about Poe and when you talk about Guillermo del Toro, and
right.
then you talk about Stephen King outside of like the super scary stuff. You are talking about this gothic love, which is about yes, there might be spooky things happening, there might be ghosts around and afoot, but it's also about the people and it's about the heart and it's about the emotion and all of that together. So, I mean, when you talk about stories, it doesn't have to be just the blood and guts of certain horror.
Yes, that's for sure. And that I think that I respond to that world, like the idea of like, a poltergeist or, I think that like early Scream, right? It was violent. It wasn't necessarily gruesome. Again, look, and I think that's changed. Like I'm 54 years old, so the older I get, the more I am affected by watching people. Like I can't watch sports and watch a kid get hurt. Like I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't want to watch that. Right? I have the same kind of visceral reaction when there's gore on screen that like people are, being murdered. I just feel like that's not my escapism. And I love if it's somebody else's, all good. I like the idea of sitting in a seat in a movie theater and having a visceral reaction as you're sitting there watching something. I think like having your heart race and changing your sort of like endorphin level based on what you're seeing on a screen. I think that that's the thrill of a great horror movie. Um, but
Yeah.
the old it, the more I'm not sort of into it. And the funny thing is, like, look, in my relationship with horror, I did Scream and 13 Ghosts a million years ago.
Right.
And it isn't until the last like sort of 12 months that I was like, okay, I'm gonna do Grave Conversations. I'm gonna do this, killer cake thing for Blum. I'm doing Five Nights at Freddy's, which is a, iconic piece of IP in the horror space. So, I'm and building Macabre Spirits, this idea of embracing what is a part of my life, is, I see the power of that.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, when, as a child of the 80s, when I talk about horror, there's the over-the-top slasher horror of Friday the 13th, which I enjoy, but it's not the lingering gaze of people getting hurt. But then you mentioned Poltergeist, which is a movie about community, about family, and
Mm.
it's scary and it's spooky, but it's about people kind of solving or trying to come together to solve the problem. And so, I mean, that notion of community, this is my segue into the Macabre Spirits, because this Reposado Tequila that you are a part of, which is coming out this Halloween, is about the fans of horror, about kind of a commitment to spirits, I guess, so talk a little bit about your connection with this. Are you a tequila guy, first off? Is this
I am a tequila guy. I
okay?
am. Yeah. Yeah. So I started a company 2 years ago called Find Familiar Spirits. And the idea of the company is to create high-end spirit experiences around fandoms and communities, right? So instead of going out and building whiskey and competing against Bullet, Rye, and all these, different brands, our whole thing is like, we don't care about that. We don't want to be the biggest whiskey in the world. What we want to do is be the biggest whiskey in this community or for this fandom. So it's building an experience for people and meeting them with what they love. So our first drop was a thing called Quest's End. That's our first flagship brand. It's a Dungeons and Dragons sort of sword and sorcery brand. Either 16 different drops over the course of 4 years. Each bottle is a different class. Each bottle is a different expression of whiskey. And that expression of whiskey is built for the character that it's representing. So Paladin is different than Rogue. Warlock is different than Dragon. So every single one of them is different. And then each bottle comes with the next chapter of an ongoing saga. So when you buy the drink or when you buy your bottle, you get the next chapter of something that you're continuing across 16 different drops. So we did, we went to the fandom of obviously I love Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
It's something I'm super passionate about. I love gaming. I love that whole world. So we built for that community. It went incredibly well. And now our 1 year anniversary is actually today of Find Familiar Spirits when we launched. And tonight, it's October 2nd. This is going to launch tomorrow, I think, or whenever this week. But, we are announcing Macabre Spirits, which is our next sort of exploration of fandom centered around this Reposado tequila. Yeah, and this is like the first time I've actually ever talked about it. This is the first interview I've had about, we've talked a little about it on a couple of different interviews, but they were really Matthew Lillard centric. So I'm still trying to figure out short answers to
And
big
I
questions.
get it. I get it because it's like all this stuff lives in your head, and then suddenly people start asking about it. You're like, oh shit, I need to actually
I need
form
to have
this
an answer.
into
Yeah, yeah.
a soundbite or something. So I get it. I'm rolling with you. And as far as and I'm familiar with the Quest Ends whiskey as a casual D&D player myself, and the I like the fandom centric kind of spirits approach that you're taking with the company and with Macabre Spirits. But from what I'm seeing, so I'm only seeing the photos so far, and I really want to get my hot little hands on this box, because this looks like a really gorgeous presentation of a box. So as someone that has launched the company and is also, like, out there being the spokesperson for it, talk about what we're getting with this box, and also sort of the extra treat, perhaps like a little bit of reading material that comes along with
Right.
the tequila.
Well, that's the fun sort of that's the exciting part of the whole adventure. So what we do, our first question is what value do we add to a community? Right? So this is the second flagship. So we looked at the horror community. It's okay. We can't just sell something that looks spooky. right? And trading on people's passion to transact financially is kind of crap, right? That's not who we want to be. So like our whole thing is like, well, what do we add? What can we bring to people? And so for us, it's about storytelling, and the idea of Macabre Spirits is built around this idea of telling scary stories, or spooky stories. So Mike Flanagan obviously is a collaborator. We're collaborators together on Life of Chuck. He's become a dear friend of mine, and so we asked Mike Flanagan, and he said yes to writing his first novella, his first short story, his first horror sort of horror tale in a novella. So every bottle of this Reposado, every bottle of Macabre Spirits comes with this beautiful bound book written by Mike Flanagan, modern master of horror. And it tells the story. It's called Rare, Fine, and Limited. And it's his first sort of foray into short stories, and it's awesome. So the bottle goes direct to customer. It comes in a beautiful box. The tequila, the bottle itself is gorgeous and the tequila is delicious. But the crown jewel of the whole proposition is this short story that Flanagan's written that's awesome.
Hey, let me ask you, as someone obviously you've been in this business for a long time, but you also everything, even though we've not met, your reputation precedes you as a very affable and grounded person. So okay, you work with Flanagan on Life of Chuck, and then you've got this company happening. Is there any moment where you're like, I don't know, I feel a little weird asking Flanagan or another collaborator about getting involved in this? Like, because there's the very industry in LA and Hollywood approach about like, hey, you want to be in my movie, you want to do this, and like, but it can also feel very awkward. Do you feel that at all when you call out Flanagan and be like, hey,
I love,
want to write a
yeah,
novella for my tequila?
yeah. It's a great question because nobody asked about that. Here's my answer for that. I think that if you approach something authentically, right? My whole thing is like if I'm living in my own skin and I feel confident in what I'm offering as an opportunity for both of us. Look, there's no doubt that we are, as a brand, launching a Mike Flanagan is a huge boom for us. And I'm not gonna lie to you, like we are over the moon that he said yes. But he got to write a short story that I know he's really proud of, that he loves and adores. And so, I think that if you're saying to, like, I recently somebody asked me to do something that I'd want to do, and I clearly just said, I don't want to do that. Thank you anyways. Right? At some point in this journey, you realize that you are only responsible to do what you have to do or what you want to do. And Mike's at the same place in his life. And if he didn't want to do it in our friendship, and trust me, I laid out all of those sort of like, there's no stress here. There's no, this isn't a I need you moment. I think this would be fun. Would you want to do it? And he said, yeah. So, yeah. So at some point, you create your own barriers, like you create your own, like, no thank yous. And at some point, walking in your own skin, if you're offering something that's genuine and you're excited about, then people will receive it in the nature it's meant to be with no sort of fear about the outcome, right? Because if he says no, great. It's not I'm never going to hold that against him.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I would just went around and sort of like, if I was a dude who's glomming onto people and sort of holding on to fame or holding on to opportunities or conniving my way into situations, then that like sort of version of me would be miserable,
Yeah.
right? And just never been that guy. Like if I am in this industry because I was only good at one thing growing up, and I just kept doing it. I didn't become an actor to be quote unquote famous. This is what my passion is. This is what I love to do. And if I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing medieval times somewhere in Detroit, Michigan, right? I would be doing this in some capacity, one way or another. So the whole maneuvering or glomming onto or manipulation, that it's just never been in my it's just not why I'm here or who I am.
It's what would you say is like sort of the moment? I think part of it also comes with for all of us like age and maturity and like realizing that Well, yes, you can say no without being a bad guy, and yes, you can, you can kind of figure out who you are in life as well as in our respective careers. What would you say would be the moment for you where you went from actor that may have been feeling anxious in pursuing the job to just a human that felt a little bit more settled in with who they were and that awareness of like, oh, this is me. This is where I fit, both in life and in this industry.
Yeah, it's great. I love that question. It's very clear for me. I started to teach. At some point, I stopped working in Hollywood and I realized, oh no, I'm not going to make it. I may be one of those guys from the 90s or the 80s or the too early aughts that never comes back, right? Easily could have happened. I could be, outcast, but it's not that nobody. The good news is I was always in good standing. I feel like I always do hard work. I always bring my game. I feel like I bring positive energy to the set. Like I like how I am on set and I like how I work. So I always knew I had like friends out there. But at some point, the value add that you have to a film was like, oh, I may not bring value. And if you don't bring value, you're not going to work. And so at some point I was like, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? How am I going to feed my kids? And I started to teach. And in teaching, it became very clear that my beliefs became grounded in what I think are my truths about craft and about acting. And then on top of it, you find your sense of you load into your own wisdom, which sounds dramatic, but I was 45 years old. I'm like, oh, this is what I am and this is who I am. And there's a wisdom and there's a strength that comes with that. That sort of, and don't get me wrong, I get insecure. Don't I still need jobs. I still am desperate for things. I still want attention for my work. But at some point you load in a different way that, and I always say it's wisdom. And I think that's a super powerful word. And um I use it intentionally.
Yeah. I think wisdom, it's for me, I think it's confidence but not cockiness, but it's also a comfort with who you are. Like, you know, I don't necessarily think that I'm the greatest at what I do, but I know I'm good. And I know I like to work with other people and bring enthusiasm and authenticity. And I think those things for me guide me and help me be good, and I think we all kind of pull from different toolboxes, but that's kind of might also again just be age. Um, you're doing this Amazon Prime series as well, the Killer Cakes with Blumhouse, and I'm loving what I've seen about it, and it's working with chefs and makeup effects artists and combining the tasty horror with just tasty treats. And you look like you're having a blast in this show. Other than just kind of what was the appeal for you? Was it being able to host a show like this? What was
A little bit. Like you're like at it. Look, at some point in my life, I'm like, okay, well, what if I never get another acting job? Like, what are the opportunities? Along comes this opportunity. At that point was really excited about getting in bed with Jason, with Blumhouse and like what they're building. I just come off Five Nights before Five Nights had come out, and I thought it was like made sense. The show was supposed to come out last year in conjunction with the film, right? And so that sort of like that combination, just as a Machiavellian sort of strategy, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense, and I think it's gonna work. It got pushed because of the union strikes last year, and so now it's coming out now. So, yeah, and then like just to see if I could do it. Right, my first job ever was a show called Skate TV on Nickelodeon, only skateboarding show made by skaters for skaters, which is hilarious. And then this is the second time I've ever hosted something, and I had a blast. I mean, I love being on set. I love sort of that experience. I like the rush of it. I like the grind of it. Like you're there all day working. I sort of like the ability to maintain energy through that. It's a challenge. And it's something I'd never done before. And I actually had a great time doing it. So we'll see what happens.
I've been around some of these confections and concoctions where either at a, horror cons or certain industry events or whatever it might be, and they're made to look gross, but sometimes it reaches a tipping point for me where I'm like, that's no longer appealing. Is there an uncanny valley of edibles, like of these confections where you're just like, I don't know. That's just a little too realistic or a little too gross looking that I can't even taste that or enjoy that.
Well, there's no doubt. Well, first of all, everything's built for looks.
Right.
There's like a little tiny section that's built for edible. It's like the back haunch of the pig butcher with the machete. Like that's the only part of that you want to eat. And so they'll focus on that little square and they feed me that piece. But look, I thought it was the hook of, cake artists with special effects, I thought was super fun. I just thought that was like sort of a clever idea. And it turned out like they sort of blew my mind. Like they have things in there vomiting, they have things in there spurting blood. I mean, and they're cake. So it was really impressive. It was fun. I also like the idea of I found myself really advocating for them, right? I had this sort of I really connected with wanting them to all to succeed because I was like, come on, we gotta go. Like at some point, you're like, you're really trying to support them and get them all to find success in some capacity.
I want to get back to Macabre Spirits in a moment, but first, I do feel like well, you mentioned Five Nights at Freddy's. You're heading back into production for the sequel, right? In
Yeah,
October.
we are. Yeah, I just got my dates an hour ago. So my dates are locked in and having great conversations with Emma. Script's coming along. Script's in a great place. I feel like can't talk anything about it, obviously, but I feel like they really listened to some of the fan reaction from the first movie, and I think this movie's gonna be much different and exciting.
It's such a perfect piece of IP to sound, I guess, kind of industry that as a guy in his late 40s that grew up with the Showbiz Pizza and the Chuck E. Cheese
Yeah.
that both loved but was also always aware of like a little terrified by having a birthday party where I was encouraged to go up and hug that animatronic, very disturbing kind of memory, a core memory locked in there. But then also this franchise that has connected with like the younger generation as well. It's it feels like it exists in this cross section of joy. Is it how are you kind of wrangling with it? Is it allowing you to tap into those childhood memories as well as like the joy of being part of something that is so relevant for younger generations as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, it is a job, so you're surrounded by animatronic things, but it's not like I'm pulling on childhood memories personally. I will say that it's thrilling to be a part of something that's so relevant for so
Yeah.
many kids. I mean, I have to say I've been really lucky in that, Scream was sort of like a generational thing, and Scooby-Doo had its moment for those kids. Scooby-Doo is both of those films are more popular now than they've ever been in their entire lives. It's really crazy. And then to find myself in this new sort of franchise, which is probably the biggest and the brightest out of all of them, to be honest, just in terms of it's already got a fan base. It's already voracious. And the first movie was such a massive hit that I'm excited to see where this goes, what I get to do going forward, the opportunities that my character has, like sort of to grow within the franchise, and and how many movies we get to sort of play in, which is, as an actor, is that's as good as it gets.
I've I have to say with like the Scooby-Doo movies, live action Scooby-Doo movies, it took me a while to appreciate them because I think initially maybe demo wise it wasn't initially for me, and then I came
Yeah.
along and I was like, "Oh, okay, I dig this." And then I've really loved your voice work, your voice acting with Shaggy, and so happy to see you continuing that. I know you probably can't say much, but you are doing more with Shaggy and another project, yes?
Yeah. Oh no. So I've got a book thing that I'm working on called it's the Character Studio that we go out and create like an interactive experience for Shaggy and Scooby and kids, right? So you get on, you create avatar, you get a chance to talk to the gang like, or to Shaggy and Scooby, and then they take that avatar and put you in an actual book. I have it actually. Well, you want me to show it? Hold on a sec.
Sure, yeah.
It's kind of cool because I just got it. Um, but this is the avatar that I made. And so they put you in this book and they put your character like in
Oh,
with the gang. So and it's What a Night for a Night, which is the first Scooby-Doo episode ever broadcast. So it's something they came to me to like sort of partner with, and I did, and it's been really exciting. It's been really exciting. So that's the Scooby-Doo project that I talked about on my socials, and then the truth of the matter is that since COVID, there's a lot of transition at Warner Brothers, which owns the property, in terms of ownership and who owns and who's producing what and sort of Hollywood politics. We've been shut down
yeah.
for a good 3 years, 2 years. I mean, we were halfway through a new series and they pulled the plug on it. I mean, they're doing that all over the place, sort of like stopping production. And so it's been a hot minute, but hopefully they'll get something going soon.
Would you ever have a desire to see like a sort of, they had the DC Comics. I was a little bit older skewing, kind of more horror, post-apocalyptic Scooby-Doo. Would you ever have an interest in voicing Shaggy in a serious or more straight horror focused kind of story?
Yeah, there's something out there called Scooby Apocalypse, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There's a comic book series. I would love to do it. I think that look, for me, I want to do it as long as I serve the brand, as long as I serve that franchise, that character, as long as I'm doing it, and have a voice that sort of represents what he is, then I'm in. I mean, it's not for me to judge how kids or young adults or full-grown adults find the character. It's for me to hold space for that character to live in the world. So
yeah,
however they want to apply it, that's up to them. I mean, there's definitely times in my life where I didn't really love what they've done with the character. I mean, there's one series in particular that I'm like, meh. You're messing with something that's iconic and tried and true and a staple of kids. And you talk about, horror experiences. Scooby-Doo is a young person's first sort of foray into horror, foray into storytelling, right? With real stakes and people, these kids feel things as they watch Scooby and Shaggy reflect their own fear on screen. And they learn about storytelling. They learn about like sort of their introduction to this gift. And so the idea of going out there and sort of, you know, playing with the tropes of what Scooby and Shaggy and what the gang represents is not my favorite personally.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I as someone that loves ghost stories and loves paranormal and folklore and everything, Scooby-Doo is a big part of my the childhood of like, oh, like here's kids going around there and admitting that they're scared, which is great. Being
Yeah.
admitting that it's scary. Uh, I have to ask obviously about the Scream stuff because it's just a staple. Those things that your bosses will kill you if you don't ask about it. But the question I guess is not will you be coming back? It's more like how about let's take it in another direction. That if you're going to come up with the weirdest, craziest way that definitely Stu would not come back, that would be rejected by every studio, what might it be? Evil twin, undead zombie? I don't know.
Evil Twin's been thrown out a lot. They did a lot of work to sort of build up the fact that Stu is still alive in 5 and 6. I mean,
Yeah,
those guys really started to support it and like little Easter eggs throughout. And I thought it was gearing up to be a thing in 7. Um, but yeah, it's not. I don't know if that's Kevin Williamson stepping back in, which I think is fantastic. Neb's coming back, which I think is great.
mhm.
Although I thought Melissa was brilliant as well. Um, so look, I it's to me this is somebody else's like sort of these this movie, this franchise. This is for the fans. This is somebody else's sort of like um it's their love language. It's for me. Listen, if they want me back and it makes sense for the show, and if we can find a way to do a great deal, then yeah, I'll go back. But for me, I am happy if I die today, only playing Stu once. That will be
Yeah.
just fine.
Well, I've got two quick questions, then I'll let
Great.
you go. But I guess the first one is you'd mentioned that you had grown up in Michigan and Detroit area before you made the leap to Orange County. And I happen to love Michigan. I'm originally I'm originally a Florida boy. I live in New York City, and but I always thought Florida was the weirdest state, and then I started spending a lot of time in Michigan, and I love the weirdness of Michigan. So any great ghost stories or legends or just stuff that you grew up with, maybe the creepy old house at the end of the block that just really sits with you.
Yeah. I had an experience once so when I was 19, I started a theater company in Hollywood, California. We were on Gordon Street, which is one block east of Sunset and Gower, which is like right in the middle of everything. And it was a little dance theater that we converted over into a theater and or dance studio we converted into theater. And one night we were working late, my partner and I, Dalton Grant, and we were sitting there and we were on ladders. And all of a sudden the lights started to flicker, right? And we started making some kind of snide joke about like ghosts or something. And we had beepers back then, and both of our beepers went off with crazy numbers at the like not same time, but very close to the same time. To the point where at 19, you're sort of invincible, and we both shit our pants. And to this day, I don't know. Look, my whole thing with the supernatural, like I walk into a place anytime I feel scared, I will say out loud, I believe in you. You do not have to prove yourself to me. I support you. I love you, but you can stay where you're at. You do not have to show yourself because I believe in you. I have no desire to come face to face with some kind of specter. And playing Dungeons and Dragons, I know that they can do lots of damage. So it's not something I'm really keen into.
Well, David D and I, we're trying to put together some fun stuff, so we might have to pull you along for some adventures, but we'll throw you in the midst of the spooky
Somebody
stuff.
was like, "Do you want to go to Skinwalker Ranch?" I'm like, "No, I don't. I don't want to do that. I
I
don't want
was
to be."
just there, actually.
Were you? Was
Yeah.
it freaky?
Uh, only because you're out in the desert and it gets freaky and you've heard all the stories. So, I mean, yeah, it gets creepy out there, but I love it. I love the adventure, but like
It's
you
super
know,
weird. I don't want to be there. I don't want. You're a weirdo. I don't want to be there. I'm like, what else can we do that night? I will literally pull out my own teeth before I go to Skinwalker Ranch. I'll just like literally take pliers and pull them out one by one, hour by hour.
we're bringing you to a creepy
I'm not
location.
going.
It's
I'm not
happening.
going.
Uh, I
Nope.
guess finally with Macabre Spirits. So let's say we acquire Macabre Spirits. We have this gorgeous box. We've got this novella by Mike Flanagan, and maybe we got a fire going. I don't know what set the scene
Ah,
for how to enjoy
right.
Macabre Spirits and how to take in Flanagan's novella. Would you serve it up? Would you make a
Right.
cocktail? What would be the Matt
So,
Lillard cocktail? You set the scene
right.
and how to enjoy it.
So first of all, we started with a whiskey company. I don't really drink whiskey. It's too much for me. I can't deal with it. So I drink tequila. Very simple, right? I do tequila soda, ranch water. I'll throw in some lemon. So here's what we do. First of all, let's just assume that I've built or have purchased some incredible house in the mountains. Long way off, not doing that right now. But like you're in like a cabin or you're in like a beach house or you're like someplace that you have zero responsibility, right? Whether your kids are off to college or they're spending the night somewhere else or you and your wife are just chilling and you're like, I am going to open this bottle of Macabre Spirits. First of all, you pull it out of the box. The box, let me tell you, the box is going to win awards for the packaging. We work with a guy named Kendrick who works for Shepherd. I'm going to say both of the things out loud. Mike is his co-partner. Those guys are crushing design for us. So they've designed this box, right? And you open up the box. The box is incredible. You open the box, and there's this bottle. The bottle's gorgeous. We have taken a year of building this bottle. On it is a piece of art by Mia Bergeron, who is the artist, right? This is the piece of art. Like it's an actual oil painting. I have it on the side. She just sent it to me. That is this is a story of like sort of what you find in the novella. So then you pour yourself, you go out back and you pull like a fresh lime off of a tree, or you grab a spruce of rosemary, or you grab something to sort of add your tequila. You pour your ice, you put your soda in there, and you put in your reposado and you sit down and you start reading. I think it's 77 pages in its current format, maybe up to 80. Doesn't I don't know yet. And as you read it, right, sip your tequila, and as you get to the end, you will enjoy every single sip you just took because it ends in such a way you'll be like, oh, that was good. And then you'll pick up the phone and you'll tell your friends, and then everyone will go buy some tequila because it's don't spoil it. But the ending is great. Like our whole thing is like literary horror. Our whole thing is like, can storytelling be beautiful and macabre and like dark with these rich tapestries? And Flanagan has a crazy imagination. And he takes you through the story, and the end is, I think, really pays off. So look, we were as we launched Quest End, we were trepidatious and but yet optimistic. And here we are thrilled and titillated with the opportunity to bring this to people because we think it's really exciting.
And then as Matt Lillard sets the phone down after telling his friends about it, after he closes the Mike Flanagan novella and sets down the empty glass of the Macabre Spirits in this mountainous, remote home, that's when the hauntings begin. Because it turns out the house was located on Skinwalker Ranch the whole time.
And then I'm so hammered I can't drive, and I get eaten by the undead.
There you go. There's the movie. There's the story.
There it is. Aaron, thank you for having me, man. I
Matt,
really.
thank you so much, man. I really appreciate speaking with you. I hope we get to talk again in the future. And best of luck with Macabre Spirits. Send me a box. Send me some goodies.
Done. Done. Absolutely, brother.
All
All
right.
right, good. Thank you, man.
Thanks, man. Talk to you later. Bye. Now is Matthew Lillard, actor and now spirit maker behind Find Familiar Spirits Company and behind the Macabre Spirits Tequila, which is available for pre-order now. And as we talked about, when you get that Macabre Spirits, when you pre-order that, you get delivered into your hot little hands. You get not only this gorgeous looking bottle, you get a story by Mike Flanagan, and only through Macabre Spirits will you be able to check out that story. All right, spooky nerds. I'm Aaron Sagers. This has been Talking Strange. Until next time, be kind, stay spooky, and keep it weird.